Yeah. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. What's up? We'll give some people a few minutes to come on in. I normally would do my introduction, but people say they can't hear it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to
You
waste
mean
time
theme?
doing
You
that
have theme
today.
music? You have theme music?
Yeah,
All right.
cut, my
I
Jill
like
cut.
I like that.
Huh?
That's official.
You said meal prep?
I know, my Jill cut, but it's not, people said they can't hear it.
Mm-hmm.
People are coming on in. We're going to give it a few more minutes. They said they can't hear it. Like you didn't hear it last time, did you? Did you hear it last time? No?
I didn't.
Razan, can you hear me?
I
Razan
can
is
hear you.
frozen.
I can hear
Yeah.
you.
Okay, you didn't hear it. Okay. Nobody could hear that the video slide from last time, right? Nobody.
I don't remember theme music. I can't say if I didn't hear it.
I need a producer.
It's coming.
I'll do it.
Right, you couldn't hear it. Teresa said she could.
That will do
Hey,
it.
Teresa, good evening. You couldn't hear it, could you? Huh? What did you say? What did John say?
Well, I said that will certainly do it. Producer.
Oh, getting a producer. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
certainly do it. It's very nice out here.
Yeah. It looks nice. We'll give it a couple more minutes, and then we'll get started.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
You know, I'm
What did you say?
I said I'm starved. You know, I'm doing my intermittent fasting. So I try to do keto and fasting, you know, when you don't eat for 16 consecutive hours. And I'm just, I'm at like the 14th
I'm trying to do the keto. Oh, you're almost there, bro. Hold on.
Yeah, 2 more hours.
I have tried it. But okay, good evening. So when did you do yours? Hey, Tondo, come on in. We're going to get started in just a second. Just give us a few more minutes here. How long have you been doing the keto fasting?
Keto fasting. Yeah, so I usually...
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I usually try to do... I've been doing it for the past few months, but now I'm a little more consistent. But it does make a difference when you give your body like 16 hours to break, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
This platform you're using is gaining traction. I've seen it show up on another scenario too, this StreamYard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really like it. It's really nice. It's really, really nice. Really nice. I just wish my intro will play. All right. I think we're going to go ahead and get started. All right. Tonight, welcome back, you all. Tonight is part 2 of being a Black man in America. The other, and we had 3 very distinguished guests on last week, and they have decided to grace us with their presence once again. And this time, we're going to do things a little different. I have a little more structure in place for this particular session or this particular show, because I actually have some questions of my own, and I'm dying to hear their thoughts and perspectives on a lot of what's going on. Before we get started, I do want to take time to celebrate the memory of George Floyd, who actually had his final service on yesterday in Houston, Texas. And I just want to take time to acknowledge him and his ministry, I said his ministry, but it was almost like a ministry. His legacy, the life that has turned out to be that is impacting this country. So I definitely want to honor him and his family. And yeah, so I want to take that time to pay my respects there. All right. So what I think I'll do is, if each person could just briefly tell who you are, so that I'm not, reading the bio again. You just tell us who you are and your name, where you're living, and then we're gonna jump right on in. Let's start off with Julius tonight.
Hey everybody, my name is Julius. I'm a lawyer and I live in Boston.
Thank you. He's a lawyer and he lives in Boston. All right. Who's next? John?
Good evening. Thank you for having me on tonight. My name is John Sanders. I'm a sociocultural anthropologist based out of New York and Atlanta, Georgia.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome, John. Thank you for coming back. And Raazon?
Yes, good afternoon or good evening, everybody. My name is Raazon King. I live here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I'm an HR professional, learning and talent development specialist.
Awesome. So our guys are coming from diverse backgrounds, but the one thing that they have in common is that they are Black men in America. And so I want to start off by first asking this question, and I'm going to pose it first to Julius, and then everybody else can dive in after that. But Julius, what does it mean to you to be a Black man in America during this time?
Well, it means a lot of different things, of course, but I think to simplify, I would say it's a confusing time for me personally, because there's part of me that feels a great deal of anxiety and just anguish and sadness and anger with everything that's going on, but it's another part of me that's proud. It's because in spite of all that, we're still here, still rocking. And that's to me, that's what we have to do. But I'll be lying if I said I don't feel sad or anything, because to me, I've never been one to live my life in fear or to back down from anything. But something that I try to keep in mind is that danger is real, fear is not. So I try to be mindful of it, but I try to guard myself in a way that I don't allow that to stop me from carrying out my goals, my missions, and just having self-determination. So it's conflicting, but I want to say the stronger feeling is that I'm proud, and I'm, despite everything kind of going against me systemically, still here.
Wow, I really like what you said. It's danger and fear, and how they're different. I really, really like that. And I think that is the constant reality, not only for Black men, but for Black people in particular, that the danger is not something that is made up in our minds, but it actually is real. But the fear, to live in fear, is a whole nother thing altogether. And I think that's where the conflict comes and the tension comes, at least for me, the fear, and the danger. That's amazing. Anybody else want to add to that? Other two gentlemen want to kind of share what it is to be, what it's like to be a Black man in America during this time?
Mr.
Go
King,
ahead, Brother John.
You want to share? Who's going to go? Was that Raazon? You going?
I think it's an emotional time for me. I'm not scared though. The emotions are around a little bit of hurt, and sometimes the emotions are around some frustration. If I had a fear or a concern, I'm not so much concerned about the enemy as much as I'm concerned about my community and what we will band together on and what we will not band together on. That's where my concern is at. All while this has been going on, I don't think we've been in agreement on some of the hows, and that's okay.
Okay.
Um, but I wonder what that means in the long term around when we don't agree on the hows. Um, and so I think that's where I am. I'm definitely very active, but I'm also very conscious that, I was talking to someone the other day about a cape. Like, I'm not Superman, so I am trying to do what I can, as well as banding with others, realizing that I'm not Superman, but us moving together. And then I might need that one day to say, not today. I just need to relax today, build
Yeah.
myself back up, and I'll be
Yeah.
back out there tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I'm feeling.
Yeah, Raazon, that's a great point. I've had several conversations about this. I hope and I pray that as a Black community, that we'll create space, a sacred space for one another to do our part, our own individual part, okay? Because while one may protest, one may have a seat at the table fighting for policies. Someone else may be out grassroots, starting up a nonprofit organization. Someone else may be using their social media platform to let their voice be heard. But I think we have to give respect to everybody's process and where they are in this journey. And we have to be mindful that because of all of these events that have happened, we have to be mindful not to re-traumatize ourselves by constantly playing the images and the videos over and over again without taking a break. That there isn't, I don't think, is a healthy move at all. And so you raise a very valid point, because sometimes we can be, as a community, we can be hard on each other, judging what, well, you're not protesting enough, you're not this. And so, like I gave the example, my sister and her husband went out to protest in Georgia. Me, I don't trust myself protesting, because the minute I think somebody looking at me wrong, or I think somebody to push me, I want to fight. I know I don't look like it, but the ghetto girl from Detroit want to rise up.
I wasn't even gonna say that. I wasn't even gonna say that.
Listen, for me, you are gonna say the ghetto girl from Detroit. Yes, it's true. So, but I know my limitations, right? So the way that I'm fighting, my contribution is my brain power. It's my hands. It's stuff we created, what is used in this platform, right? And I don't want to be judged. You're not militant enough. You're not Black power enough. Well, I am. I'm just staying in my lane. I don't trust me to protest. Some people get nice, and I wouldn't be nice. I'd be trying to fight. I'd be, you know what I'm saying. So thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate that, Raazon. Did you want to add something to that, John, before we move on?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a very interesting time for me. Actually, for me, it's kind of, I wouldn't say the opposite. I'm excited. This is a phenomenal time. My heart definitely goes out to Floyd and all the men and women who've been victimized. But people like me who've been studying these issues for over a decade, like what I find interesting was just a few weeks ago, we had Black rappers like Wale and Lil Wayne and all of our hip hop artists claiming that racism was a thing of the past and that social injustice is some type of myth, and they were actually holding on to that truth. I mean, there was a certain level of delusion that existed within the Black community. And that type of mentality was pervasive all throughout our entire culture. So I'm happy that we have this wake-up call, because it's time for us to step into reality. My last point is, and I was talking to someone recently, I'm happy that we're getting out of this colorblind delusion that we've been in that has been destructive. So this is an opportunity for us to understand that if we don't confront our problems, we'll never find solutions to create a better future for ourselves collectively. So I'm excited. My heart is heavy due to obvious reasons, but I'm really excited about the new consciousness that we now have. Now people aren't afraid to say, let's build Black community. At one time, people were afraid to use the term Black. So I not me. I was never in that boat, but I'm happy that people have a heightened awareness.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. I love it. It kind of leads me to this point. I've been doing a lot of thinking about our civil rights leaders and fathers of the past who paved the way. My mind kind of automatically went to Martin Luther King. And one of the things I was thinking about was how he was considered, for the most part of his life, a peaceful man. But toward the end of his life, the general consensus was that this peaceful man now would pose a huge threat. And I'm curious to know your thoughts about how this country tends to view Black men. Is there a fear associated with your power, with your innate power or ability to impact or to change lives? If that fear really does exist, please shed the light on it. Talk about it. Raazon, start. Raazon, I want to start with you.
Man, my mind was going like this, boy. So shout out to my fraternity brother, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., A5. But
oh, awesome.
Here's what I'll say. I don't know. The fear of Martin Luther King became around. I'm not gonna say fear. I'm gonna say it was around his change of opinion and position. I think he was the same person. He just changed his position. And when he changed his position, it became.
But did he just became vocal with it? Did he become more vocal? You think? I cut you off.
Did he become more vocal? I couldn't disagree with that, because if he's pushing one platform of resistance and things of that nature, and then as time goes on, he switches his position and starts to say some other things. But he was the same man. He wasn't. He didn't say go grab up arms or anything like that. He hadn't even got to that point yet. He just simply changed positions, and with that, it's always a problem when we change position. When we play our position and we play our role, it's never a problem, as long as we do that. You see it in sports, you see it in business, you see it in politics. The moment you step out of line, then it becomes a problem. So this whole idea of trying to be self-sufficient, I think could be a challenge in America, because we've never had equal footing since we got here. I heard a brother tell me, he said, when they took us from Africa, when they were doing the resources, that they also knew exactly who we were at that time as well. And that's a whole nother discussion that maybe Brother Sanders can put us up on. But, they've always known that we were a special and resilient and a talented people. And that still hasn't changed. So last thing, you used to need a high school diploma. They changed that and said you need a bachelor's degree. Then they changed that and said you need a master's degree. Then they changed that and said you need PhD. So they continue to move the line in this country because we haven't quite gained control of any of the institutions or the systems, which is why I think some people are in favor of abolishing systems, because they're not going to let us have control of them. So I think he simply changed positions, but I do think he was the same person.
That's interesting. You said he stepped out of, well, you didn't say out of pocket. I'm saying out of pocket. He removed himself from, what and how people identified him. That made me think about Karen when he did that. The moment that you step out of line and the moment that you begin to, it's almost like the moment you become awake. The moment when you become awake is the moment when you will experience your most resistance, and then everybody who said they were for you, the peaceful king, the one who was compliant.
And the last thing is, they're not concerned about the people we don't listen to. They're concerned about the people we listen to.
Right.
And when he was organizing
Correct.
the Poor People's March, you got to understand, poor peoples didn't say black poor people. It was white and black poor people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a problem because now people are listening and lights out.
Well, can you repeat yourself?
Julius, what do you have to add to that? I'm sorry, John, I'll get right to you.
Cool.
Oh, so what I was going to add was, it was similar to what Raazon was saying, because something that I've learned about / studied a little bit, you know, the history of the civil rights movement, just from my own knowledge. And I know towards the end of his life, a lot of Dr. King's work was directed at poverty and trying to get people out of poverty. And so I know, I believe it was his second to last book in 1967. It's called Where Do We Go From Here? Community or Chaos. And so that was about poverty. And so kind of related to what I was saying last week, just how in America is all about a dollar. So people saw that he was really directing his activity at that, which is getting people out of poverty, which is, you know, is going to affect money. And so that's what brought him to Memphis in 1968 too. He was down there for a labor dispute, and then we saw what happened and what they did. And so I think it matters a lot what you're saying too, when people get, and by people I mean the government, when they start trying to get heavily involved or even more involved in a bad way. But,
Right. John, go ahead, my brother.
Sure. I have a few points, and I want to make sure I'm on the same wavelength. So just let me know so I don't deviate. For one, your question was centered around black men. Are black men seen as a threat, or are black men intimidating? Like, I guess the brand of black male, is that an intimidating brand in America? And the answer is yes, because the reality is, just like I stated last week, you know, a man represents headship, leadership. And if you want to destroy a community or destroy a culture, you start by cutting off the headship, and that's the man. A man represents protection. So there has been a strategic, methodical plot, systematic, scientific strategy that has been designed to choke the life out of the masculine energy in the Black community. Now, just to fast forward, going back to Martin Luther King, actually, I'm sorry, let me go ahead and say this. Look at how when the Black family structure was a progressive institution. Look at before integration policy was implemented, 85% of Black households were headed by Black men. You had a Black man, a Black woman, kids and a dog in one house, and they lived happily ever after. It wasn't until white supremacy crept into the community and people like Martin Luther King, who I love and respect so much, but he's not above critique. People like Rosa Parks, the NAACP, all these Black bourgeois organizations promoted anti-poverty programs or multicultural programs that were not specific in acknowledging the crises in the Black community. Here's the issue. When we talk about anti-poverty programs and let's save all minority programs, like the NAACP, what we do is we ignore the tremendous disparity that exists even within these groups. When you talk about poor whites versus poor Blacks, studies have shown that Blacks are still disproportionately at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder. So I respect Martin Luther King 100%, but I do believe that as a society moving forward, we have to be more strategic and methodical about our next step.
I like where John is going with that too.
Yeah.
And I think that's a discussion. I want to go some places, but everything can't be on the YouTube. Everything can't be on the YouTube. But all I'll say is I like where John is going. I like where he's going.
Like, we talk about everything but the Black agenda.
To my point.
I'm sorry?
Huh?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't want to cut you off, but I was saying.
No, I was going to say, well, it's just kind of. Go ahead, John.
Okay, I got you. I know I'm a talker, so I don't want to cut people off. But that's the problem in the Black community. It's this colorblind problem that we have. It's this situation where we talk about, let's address poverty, let's address multiculturalism, let's like this. It's a delusion that we're in. When you look at the Jewish American community, Jewish Americans are very strategic and methodical. They're not trying to save the world. If you go to New Jersey, New York, you see how the Jewish community operates. They're laser sharp focused on their own issues. They're not trying to solve world poverty before saving their own selves and their own communities, creating their own ecosystems. The Chinese, the Japanese, every group is laser sharp focused. Blacks have been conditioned to follow the Martin Luther King route, right? Which he's a phenomenal man. But if you look at Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, they were fighting for integration. They were fighting to sit at the white man's table, right? They were fighting to be accepted and liked by the white supremacist economic structure, not build your own structure and build your own community. Now, he did change the tone before he died. And he said specifically and emphatically, you all need to support the black banks. But that's not the rhetoric they were promoting. They were promoting, let's hold hands with a white guy, the same guy that exploited you for 455 years, right? The same guy who deceived you and enslaved you. You want to hold hands with him before creating a mechanism for self-preservation.
I think that argument is.
Can I add to that, Lady J? I have to add to that.
You can't add to it, but I want to. You can, but I want to say something real fast. Let me jump in real fast.
Please.
I see your point, John, and I'm just going to kick back just a little bit because I think when we start comparing ourselves to that are here, that have migrated here versus our group that was forced over here, I think sometimes part of us getting our own is figuring out how to play along until we're able to break free. And I think that is where we kind of miss it. I think it's really hard for us to do like the Asians may do and like the other groups that come here because their inception here is very different.
Very true.
No other group has been oppressed and suppressed like the Black community, like Black Americans. And so our strategy, while that is great to build your own, I'm not knocking it. Absolutely. I'm saying that most of us are not there. We can't get there because we're still like suppressed under the systemic stuff that we have to learn how to play. We learn how to play the game so that then we can begin to move and navigate into our own space. I know that's a conversation for a whole nother time, but I want to throw that out there because I strongly believe when I think about myself, I don't think I became like awake until maybe less than 10 years ago. I would say that I really became cognizant of my economic power, cognizant of what I was really bringing to the table in this country. So I think that is the ultimate, what you're talking about, John, that's ultimate. And I think leading up to that, there's so many layers and so many parts to this that we just don't jump there. Does that kind of make sense? Yes. I'm gonna come back. I know, John, you have something to say, but Raazon, I'll pull you up. Raazon,
I think what you said is exactly where I was getting ready to go. Here's the deal. Every strategy we've come up with, we're still here in 2020 having a YouTube conversation. What that tells me is no one has been successful.
That's right.
King was successful and the civil rights movement was successful and whatever they wanted to do. Malcolm X, Nation of Islam, successful in there. Black Panthers, successful in there. Pan-Africanism, trying to figure it out. I think something very important, though, that John was getting on that we just never had the chance to do. We never had the chance to really try to organize like people of the Jewish background or people of the Asian background. When we did do it, if you take the Block Wall Street, Oklahoma situation, they literally, not figuratively, they literally blew those people off the map. And so I think it's important to recognize each is a contributor, but not the answer is what I would say. So that's what I wanted to add.
No, that's great. That's that sage stuff talking right there, Mr. King. I love it. I love it. Julius, so this is kind of lead me to my next thought, or my line of questioning. How has mass incarceration of Black men become a lynching system?
Well, it's taking us out of taking us out of our communities. It's taking us out of our political power. It's literally destroyed our community. It's one of the many things I feel that have really destroyed our community. And truthfully, it's legalized slavery, honestly, because slavery is not outlawed if it's a punishment for a crime. So, like I said last week, they just criminalized our existence. And so, on top of that, of course, there is an economic piece to it as well, with a lot of companies using prison labor for their company. And really, you can keep labor very cheap. That's great for business from their perspective. And so, of course, they're going to play into it. But to me, I think one of the big evils of it is that even after you get out of prison, a lot of times you can't even go work for that company, even though you've already worked for them too.
Exactly.
So and also too, when you get out, because of course there's a massive amount of Black men that are incarcerated too, but then there's also another massive number that are also under supervision of the criminal justice system. I mean, they're on probation or something to that, or house arrest, something to that effect, to the point where they can pull you back in very quickly over something that's not that serious. And so again, I would direct people to if you didn't get a chance to watch it last week, definitely watch it this week. Watch the Meek Mill documentary, Amazon Prime, because it goes into great detail about that.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of the biggest destroyers of our community.
I was baffled over 40% of our men, our Black men in this country, are incarcerated. And I think I'm thinking about, they said 1 in every 3 Black men have been incarcerated at some point in time in their life. And we're not talking about for major violations. We're talking about for selling weed or something, something. And I'm not minimizing selling the weed. My point is
popping a willie as a probation violation, and you're in jail for almost a year on a willie.
Well, not just a year. Some people longer than that, and that's a problem, right? And then when they do get out, like Julius said, reintegrating them back into society is a challenge. And so we have this huge group of men who really haven't been given the reparation that they deserve to try to even get ahead. It's difficult. They start out at a disadvantage. John, I know you want to say something. Go ahead, my brother. I see it.
So funny. She said it's funny. I get that all the time. They're like, John, I know you want to say something. I mean, for me, I concur. I'm on the same page. For me, I think that the symbolism of all of this is also very strategic. When you look at how slavery is not just about physical enslavement or physical bondage, it's also about the psychological captivity and what these images represent. Like you're talking about creating a system and a structure in society that will keep Black men intimidated. How can we keep Black men intimidated, passive, quiet, and afraid? You all mentioned before, I'm scared. I'm really, really scared. And I was listening to Minister Louis Farrakhan not too long ago speak, and he's someone who stated emphatically I'm not afraid of anything. I'm going to definitely use my platform to speak out, and I'm not going to water my message down. This is how you liberated people. But as long as you have this dynamic where Black men feel like as soon as we walk out the door, we have to be afraid. I remember working for a development company, and all of the Black people who were hired to work for the developers who were participating in the gentrification of our Black community, they were silent and quiet about our problems because they didn't want to disrupt the power structure of that development. So this is the same dynamic. How can we intentionally instill fear into the minds of people so that they don't speak up and speak out? Because we have the gun and we shoot you all, we can kill you all and lock you up. That's my take on it. So I agree with everything that was mentioned. I just wanted to add my little piece to it as well.
Yeah, thank you. Raazon, did you want to add something to that?
What is that?
Oh, Black Power. What is that?
Damn.
Okay.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I like that. Actually pull it down a little more. Okay, now
can you speak to that?
Yeah, I can see
there are three things on that Black man's wrist. The first are the slave chains that were forced upon him. Okay? And they stayed on him for a long time.
Yeah.
They decided to take those chains off, and they decided to switch it to police handcuffs. Some people talk about the policing history. If you want to know about the policing history, I'm not going to give it to you, but go research police department histories. They didn't just arrest criminals, they did other things too. And now those handcuffs have went to plastic Ziploc ties.
Yeah.
Right? So the deal is this. Two things changed my life when I was a kid. Number one, there was a commercial that said it was a frying pan and an egg. And it said, "This is your brain." They put the egg in the frying pan and said, "This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?" Changed my life as a kid. Pretty simple to me. I guess if I take drugs, my brain gonna be fried. The second thing that changed me is when I was about 12 or 11, I was taken to jail because I was put in a program. And this is before the scared straight of today. I'm talking about the scared straight of yesterday. And they took us to the jail, and I remember clear as day, I'm 11, 12 years old. I remember walking into that jail terrified. I remember men hollering. They were hollering at us as kids, saying all kinds of crazy stuff to us as kids. I remember them putting us in a cell because they wanted us to, see what it was like. As Tookie Williams would say, the founder of the Crips, if you want to know what 23 and 1 is like, go in your bathroom, stay in there for 23 hours, and come out for 1 hour, then you get the gist. But in this case, I'm in a jail cell on a metal bed with no mattress on it, a mirror that looked like aluminum foil, and then they took us to a place where the criminals could talk to us, or who we thought were criminals at that time. And I remember them saying some of the craziest stuff to us about how if you come in here, it's a different story and there's nothing between you and I. The reason I tell that story is because for me, jail was not an option. I knew a lot of guys doing a lot of things, okay, for a long time. Not for me. When it came to my son, it was the same thing. On the last show, I told everybody the story about him wanting the Jeezy Snowman shirt. He didn't know Snowman stood for cocaine, but his father told him that the Snowman stood for cocaine so he could understand, a lot of these games that's going on. So when you talk about the prison industrial complex, we have to somehow figure out a way to keep our young men out of that system. It's just not something you want to get involved in, because once you get involved in it, like Big Mill, how long was it? Probation for 10 years? Was it 10?
Yeah, I think so. I think 10 or 11.
10 years.
Yeah.
10 years in probation. They changed the laws. They mess up your cases. They don't give you representation. You could be in the county jail for a year and a half before you even have a court date to find out that you're not even guilty.
True.
So
it's true.
It behooves us, those of us that know better, to get with our young men as best as we can. And I'm going to say this last part, because I say this to a lot of teachers and people who deal with young people. Young people don't listen to everybody, especially the ones in the street. If you don't really have that street lingo and you don't have that street experience, you need to get somebody who does have that experience to talk to those kids. Because if that's not your background, they can see right through that. You just another person coming into the after school program. I got my $1,500 in my pocket, and when school is over, I'm going back to do what I do. So we have to get the intellectuals along with the people with the background to go in and talk to our kids about what this system's going to do. It can't just be the gangsters and it can't just be the academics. It got to be the gangsters and the academics together. So that's my thought about the jail situation.
Yeah. Has any of you ever been in trouble with the law or pulled over by the police unjustly, unfairly? Any of you experienced that? Look, y'all looking at, you should see y'all faces. Don't want to tell it.
You ain't like you don't know no better. You don't ask.
I'm just curious. I can tell a story. No, I'm going to tell of a recent story from me. Last year, I was on my way to a client's house and I stopped. Well, you know how you pause at a red stop sign. You don't always stop completely. So I was guilty. I didn't stop completely. I paused. It was clear. It was like a yield, and I went through. And next thing I know, and I was in this wooded area. Next thing I know, a cop comes behind me. By this time, when it comes to like cops and being pulled over, even as a Black woman, it does make me nervous. This was during the day. So I see him coming towards the car in my mirror, but he has his hand on his side on his gun. Like he had his hand on the side of the gun. And I was like, I took my phone out and I was like, well, if something gonna happen, and you know, I want this to be recorded, okay? But when he came, he automatically assumed that when he pulled my information that it was going to come up that I had expired tags and this and that, and none of that. My record's clean, right? So it's almost like when he came back to me, he ran my information for almost 30 minutes. And I know he was looking for something. He could not find anything, right? So he came back and he's like, let's go, I have to issue you a ticket, but let this be a warning. You're supposed to stop at stop signs. Okay, fine. But he was very, very like rude and curt. And I found myself rising up, like I said, that thug life, that Detroit thug thing. It was like, just here you by yourself, be smart.
You can't do that.
But I'm a woman and felt that fear. Huh? What'd you say?
I said you can't do that to my city.
I didn't hear you.
You keep talking about Detroit city thug life.
Oh, Detroit.
Stop saying that.
Thug life. Oh, Detroit thug life. Okay, I'm sorry, Detroit. Sorry, Detroit.
That's a good
My bad.
There's really nothing wrong with it.
But what I'm saying is, in that moment, I was afraid. I really was, and it was, you know, it was at night. It was in the day, and I've been pulled over other times. When I was in Baltimore, I was pulled over. So I mean. And this cop pulled me over for no reason. No reason. He just pulled me over. And so I'm curious, that's happened to me. Have any of you experienced that? Y'all have. Y'all don't want to talk about it. Okay, I got it. Yeah. Next. Next. This is so okay. I have to respect that. Next. Yeah. Tell me, Raazon brought up a point regarding the intellectuals and the thugs like coming together. I consider you three professional men who have made it out, right? One of the other challenges in the Black community is when we make it out, being accused of not reaching back to get our own. So I'm wondering, how do you bridge that gap so that the guy who maybe was, incarcerated and didn't have the same set of opportunities, how can you use your Black privilege? Because then at that point, you're in a position to empower this brother. How can you use your Black privilege to help to grab this person without presenting yourself as better than them?
I mean, I don't think it's difficult.
Anybody.
I don't think it's difficult at all. I don't think it's difficult at all. I think the way that I stay connected is I stay connected, literally. Okay, so there are things that I know about and connected to, and I'm able to speak certain ways and just certain things that I know. And I think just like all five of us can tell authenticity, they can tell authenticity too. They know when somebody is being bourgeois and think they're better than them. I don't ever go into a situation and position that way. And if anything, you got to sometimes be careful around the confidence too, because sometimes people don't always feel, comfortable in those environments if that's not the environment in which they come from. But I'll end it and say, I think the way to come off that way is to stay connected. They know what's up.
Yeah, you brought up some really good points, Raazon.
Anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, can you hear me clear? Okay, really good. Yeah, you brought up.
Yeah, I can. Go ahead.
You brought up some phenomenal points, Raazon. Phenomenal points, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. My perspective on this is, as soon as a Black person becomes educated, and we see this time and time again, we have been systematically programmed to move out into the suburbs, which isn't a bad thing, right? I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but we've been programmed to leave the community, right? Date interracially, and I talk about that whole nother conversation. We've been taught to disassociate ourselves from the community because white America is the marker of success. Now, I believe that before you engage, communities, like there has to be a fundamental understanding of the structures and power systems that exist, right? See, if I am educated and I live out in the suburbs and I'm making a great salary, I'm driving a nice car, eating good, wearing penny loafers, I'm wearing polka dot socks, I'm being programmed to adopt a lifestyle that has really nothing to do with building community. I know tons of friends who are educated who don't really care about building community because there's no social consciousness. They don't understand that we're in a war. Like they don't understand the conversation of white supremacy. They don't understand, that there were over 100 Black business districts that were systematically destroyed by the power structure of society. They don't understand how our communities have been invaded. They don't understand how even when you look at the hair industry, that at one time was dominated by Blacks, but because of the government and policies that were passed and strategic efforts that were made, now our entire industries have been dominated by outsiders. When you don't have these fundamental truths, when you don't understand that we're in a war, you're not going to have any sense of agency to go out and reach out. And it's more than just reaching back. It's about building Black community. It's about building our own industries so that we can be a competitive force in society, in the world. So that's kind of like my take on it. We can't engage if there's no reason why we feel like we should engage. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of us we don't have the understanding because we've been suburbanized in our mentality. We like the suburbs, and there's nothing wrong with it, but there has to be a social consciousness. And we also have to understand that we're in a war.
You. Yeah, I think John.
Julius, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think John hit it on the head for me. I think the key to it all is community. And for me, I think the best, I think I said this last week as well. When you're able to show somebody something, I think that's powerful. And so people are able to see the image being me, you know, and you see yourself in that image, and it grows on itself, and it's kind of a snowball effect, and then you feel like you can do it. And so to me, that's really what I try to do. Really, is I try to be present and visible. Because I can remember in school, I don't think I wouldn't have made it through school, through college, law school, any of those things if I didn't have other Black people to look up to that were going the same direction that I was trying to go in. So for me, I said, I have to give back too, because looking back, you know, if I'm at the position that I once wanted to be in, I gotta look back and see, you know, where was I, and try to be for somebody else what somebody else was for me, and just give it back like that. And I think that's how I think that's the formula, or that's one of the ways. Of course, there's many ways to do it, but I think that's my way. And I think
you know what else too, Lady J, is every story has a beginning. Every story has a beginning, and like sometimes, for lack of a better term, the hood can see the finished product, but every story has a beginning. And the last thing is, every Blood and Crip and every gangster disciple, every Latin King is, who said they don't wear suits? Who said that they don't have a college education? So you got to be careful of who you're talking to when they say, you know, are these people connected, or how do you connect? It's plenty of people who used to bang and don't bang no more. They used to bang 20 years ago. You listen to Judge Mathis, right? Let Judge Mathis tell her he was gangster. But good Judge Mathis, he's a judge. Before they take him off, I don't know if you can be a judge now with those kind of criminal records. But yeah, sometimes people get the game twisted and they think that everybody that's like they can't be educated and change their lives. They do get educated and they do change their lives too.
Gotcha. Good. So we have a few minutes before we wrap it up. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a sentence and I want you to complete it. I'm going to start a sentence and I want you to, okay? White people are.
Wait, she froze up.
I said white people are. Complete the sentence. White people are.
Privileged.
Okay, John said privileged. Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna say complicit.
Okay.
I'm gonna say can be isolated.
Can be isolated. Okay. Black privilege is
non-existent.
I was gonna say a lie.
Black privilege is. Thank you, John. Julius.
I was gonna say not real.
Okay.
I'm gonna say black privilege is powerful.
Racial profiling is. Who wants to go first?
I'm gonna say
John. You're on mute, John. You're on mute.
Yeah, my apologies. Can you repeat the question again? Or the statement?
Racial profiling is. Racial profiling is.
Racial profiling is reality. Reality.
I'm going to say intentional.
Raazon?
Worldwide.
Intentional. Raazon?
Worldwide.
Worldwide. Mm-hmm. Okay. White privilege is. White privilege.
White privilege is systematic. Systematic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say real.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just a few thoughts. I'm going to say this name. First thing that comes to mind, just share. George Floyd.
Painful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say hero.
Hero.
I'll say reality. George Floyd is
reality.
Everyday reality.
Reality. Okay.
Yeah.
And then my last phrase, Black Lives Matter. Whatever comes to mind, Black Lives Matter.
Hijacked.
Wow.
I feel like I'm at an NWA concert.
Oh gosh.
I will say it should.
It should.
Yeah.
I'm going to say not clear, as in it's not clear that they do.
Not clear. Wow. Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm interested to hear your closing remarks tonight as we are wrapping it up. First of all, thank you all again. If anybody has any last minute questions, please put them in the chat. But thank you once again for sharing your experience, your expertise, your passion, and your commitment as a Black man in this country. I am hopeful at this time, and I am struck with, I'm nuanced by our reality as well. So much like I think it was Julius said, conflicted. But I thank you all once again for being a part of this platform and using your voice to kind of make an impact and plant a seed. So if you could just go around and give your closing remarks as we're wrapping this up, that would be great. We can start with John. John, I'll start with you.
Oh, me. Well, my closing remark. Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on a platform. Thank you for allowing us to speak and use our voices to really shift the consciousness and elevate our awareness. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Absolutely. John, I think we all shocked that that's it. Is that it?
Oh, really? Oh, believe I'm always loaded, but I'm gonna play nice. I'm trying to be nice tonight. I'm playing nice tonight.
Okay. All right. Julius.
So I also want to say thank you to you for hosting us, and to Raazon and John as well for being my co-panelists. I really enjoyed this discussion and the discussion last week as well. And I think I just want to end it with, we gotta defund the police, but we also gotta transform all of our other systems too. I think that's the way that we get to a more just society. Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you, Julius.
Lady J, I want to thank you for the platform, and I definitely wish you continued success on the platform. I want to wish Julius and John success in their endeavors, and hopefully we can have a behind-the-scenes discussion too. I think there's a lot to continue to talk about. My closing remarks is around the laws. Um, we got to get to the laws. We got to change the laws. The way we change the laws is by not voting, but in some cases, putting in our own people as well as making sure that they do what they're going to do. Everything has been controlled by laws the whole time. And the only other thing I'll say is plan a trip to Africa. I know everybody loves the Caribbean, but go a little bit further. Plan a trip to Africa. Everything the Caribbean has, Africa has too. Believe me.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's good
Especially
stuff.
Donna.
Good stuff. Listen, you all, thank you again to everybody who tuned in. I'm excited about this opportunity every Wednesday at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, weekly dose of Lady J. Please pass the word, like my page, subscribe, the notifications, hashtag to live out love, hashtag for the intellectual, hashtag weekly dose of Lady J. Next week, we are going to begin a conversation about money. We're going to talk about money and some things that we can do to manage our money during the pandemic, and some things that I want us to consider as a people around entrepreneurship and intrapreneurship. But please tune in. We have a special guest coming on. I'll be posting that information this weekend. But please, 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 if you have any questions, they're saying wonderful job, guys. Thank you so much. If you have any questions that you want to put out there for next week, please, please let me know. And once again, thank you so much. Y'all have a wonderful night. Rest, take care of yourself. Breathe, remember to breathe, and remember to live out love. Y'all have a good one. Night-night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.